Welcome to another edition of MCAT Strategy. Today we will be talking about verbal reasoning strategy. I wanted today to just lay down a foundation for future videos, but I will give you some tips on how to practice with your strategies and discuss some of the considerations that you should make. When it comes to verbal reasoning strategy, each person's strategy will be different. There will be obviously some similarities, but with practice, each person should be tailoring their own strategies to their own needs. Different people have difficulties with different types of questions, and they have different tendencies, so each person needs to come up with their own strategy that maximizes their score. I am just putting that out there because I often hear people adopt another person's strategy, but just because a strategy works for one person doesn't mean it will work for everybody, but it is definitely worth a try. But the bottom line is that each person's strategy is unique, and there is no magic strategy that will work for everybody. Verbal reasoning out of all the sections is the most practice-intensive section. So if verbal reasoning gives you problems, make sure you always keep that in mind. You need to start practicing early because you need time to train your mind to think in the MCAT style. So practice regularly and consistently and do a little bit each day. Verbal reasoning is not a section that can be crammed for, especially if you have problems with it in the first place. There is a lot of variability in practicing passages, so just because you try something new and it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that it will not work for you later on. So practice with it, and then after practicing it for a bit, then make the judgment call as to whether or not it works for you. When you're designing your own strategy, make sure you don't change your strategy too often unless it really is required. I prefer getting down a basic strategy and then start tweaking little things, but changing your strategy constantly will nullify your practice, and it will make it harder and harder for you to get comfortable with one particular strategy or method of approaching verbal reasoning. And last of all, as the date of your test approaches, finalize your strategy and just focus on practicing it and getting it down comfortably as you near the test date. Verbal reasoning is something that requires a lot of comfort with, and if you change your strategy too close to the test date, then you won't feel comfortable with it and it will be less effective for you. For me, I separate MCAT strategies into two categories. There are active strategies and passive strategies. Active strategies require more energy and requires a regular time investment. You consciously make an extra effort to carry out the strategy. Examples are writing down the main idea or focus of the passage after reading, or paraphrasing paragraphs with one or two key words. Those things require extra effort and energy, and therefore I categorize them as active strategies. I will definitely be covering more specific strategies later on, but I just wanted to lay out the foundation and present you with the definition that I use. Passive strategies require less of a time investment and are more automatic. For example, recognizing extreme wording in answer choices is something that will come up often, but it is not something that you do for every passage, and it is pretty much automatic, and once you train yourself, these things will come naturally to you. Another example of a passive strategy is slowing down when you get to a question type that you are weak on. Again, it's something that won't happen all the time, but it comes naturally and becomes automatic with practice. So those are the two categories of strategies that I define, And sometimes strategies, it's difficult to decide which goes where, but I just use these definitions to organize the MCAT verbal reasoning strategies because there are so many of them. One thing to consider when you are designing your strategy or tweaking your strategy is time. Verbal reasoning is one of the most time-intensive sections of the MCAT, and every second really does count. Time is an especially important consideration when it comes to active strategies. If you are going through all the passages, then ranking them, and then paraphrasing each paragraph with keywords and writing down the main ideas of the passage and writing down the author's stance. And if you are using that many active strategies, then you really may run into time problems because the MCAT verbal reasoning section doesn't allow for you to use as many strategies as you would like. So in general, you really want to focus on the high yield strategies that work for you, and when it comes to active strategies, you really need to pick and choose and be selective, or else you'll be doing so much that you won't have time to answer the questions. When it comes to passive strategies, I like to, in my practice, consciously use the passive strategies, and after I've practiced them over time and repeated them, they become automatic, so they don't place as big a strain on time as active strategies. However, you do need to practice them so that they do come naturally and automatically, or else the passive strategies will get in the way and you will also run into time problems. So the purpose of the video was to just talk strategy in a general way and to give you some advice when designing your strategy and practicing your strategy. I will definitely get into more specific strategies and discuss their pros and cons later on in future videos. As always, please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll do my best to respond to any comments that are left. Until next time, keep on practicing.